Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Then proactive strategy to deal with implementation and maintenance risk. We have pair programming. We already discussed TDD, test driven development, discussed continuous integration. As you develop, as you have to integrate in the configuration management tool like Microsoft Visual Source Safe, SVN, GitHub, daily testing, coding standards, refactoring, deliver every demo or release. This for proactive. Obsolete technology risk, like the case of Java Versata for the Descartes Infosys, the project for realestate.com, www.realestate.com. During the implementation, they have faced this problem that customer asked them to switch business logic from C# to Java Versata. Java Versata is a business logic suite. Business logic suite. And they don't have, the company doesn't have single Java programmer. So you have to outsource it to deal with the technology risk. The proactive strategy is that you have to train your employees, and before customer asks you to switch, you already learn about new tools, new technologies. For example, React Native is very popular now, framework is there, Kotlin is very popular. So before customer asks you to switch, you switch your team by yourself. That is the proactive strategy to deal with obsolete technology risk. Business risk, or target market is not willing and stop funding. As per the scientists, that you should stop beating the dead horse. Your project which customer is not interested is a dead horse. Like NetSol Technologies, they have developed a system for Pakistani banks to integrate with the ATM network like MADA. So they freeze that project because no bank was interested to implement that. So it was a dead horse for them. Proactive, find a customer before developing a system and develop small project. Like in case of 9/11, Agile was introduced to deliver project in couple of months, to have low investment or small investment. Reactive strategy deal with meet customer requirement, changing scope, losing a support of top management, like we discussed the Denmark-based company, or like Indian company failed for the American client realestate.com. So request the customer to give extra time and change the system as per new requirement. And there is a company TriSoft in Pakistan, American-based company. They thought to target the Pakistani market, Hakuma market, government department, and they have a project. It was file management system, and the top management or the project manager thought it's a Pakistani Hakuma department, government department. The requirements will not change, and they collected the requirements, and then for 6 months they did not meet with the customer. After developing the system, they went there to implement, and the government department asked them, "Thank you very much. Our requirements are changed. So we are not interested." Then TriSoft company knows that if this project failed, mean government departments, local market will be closed for them. So they asked the customer to change the requirements free of cost as per the new requirements, as per the new scope, and then they successfully implemented that project, and then they got project from another Hukuma department, government department, for file management system. Proactive strategy: deliver first increment in couple of weeks, consistent releases, welcome to the new requirements, prefer working software over comprehensive documentation, or like the deliver every week, like Corio.com or Descon Infosys. They promise the customer to deliver one release after every 2 weeks as per the contract, but they hire 4 teams and they start delivering 4 releases to make customer happy. Social risk: for collaboration, coordination, language, accent. I remember a case of Australian company, multinational, and they have office in Europe and England, France, Germany, Russia, Australia. Company spending $140,000 per year budget to arrange teams, different teams, distributed teams at one location, at a neutral location, hoteling, traveling, food, recreation, and because of this $140,000, it's a free time, it's a fun time for them to have their trust, coordination, communication, synchronization, understanding the psychology, bridge the cultural differences, mental level, and they can act as productive team, as one team in a distributed environment. This is an example to deal with the social risk. Another example, I remember one new startup company, American-based company. They have office in Pakistan, Bangladesh, Dubai, and they called project managers from these 3 locations in US before starting their first project, and to train from Agile coach Mike Cohen. He has a website, mountaingoat.com, Mountain Goat Software, Mountain Goat Software. Right on the Google, you will find Mountain Goat Software. Let me show you. He's a Agile coach, Scrum Master, and he's the Mike Cohen, as you can see. And he's a trainer. So get training from Mountain Goat Software founder, from Mike Cohen. And you can find videos of Mike Cohen over the YouTube. To get training from that guy, Mike Cohen, and spend 3 months in US before starting the first project, to have coordination, communication issues, social risk, synchronization, and to act as one team, as a gel team in a distributed environment. So this is the all possible risk I try to cover with my experience. Now I move to assessment. How to estimate the risk. We have a formula: risk exposure is equal to probability multiplied by cost impact. The range of risk is between 0.7 and 1 normally. So let's have implementation. Calculate the risk exposure if 70% of the software components will be reused from the 60 selected components. Average code for each new component is 100 LOC at the cost of $14 per LOC. And risk probability is 80%. So we have formula: risk exposure multiplied by cost, probability multiplied by cost impact. and cost to develop a component is cost per LOC multiplied by LOC. Let's have the exercise. So if we have 70% of the components will be reused, and the risk is for the failure of 30% new components. Total components is equal to 60. And out of 60, 70% will be reused. So reusable components is equal to 60 multiplied by 0.7 is equal to 42. How many new components? 60 minus 42 is equal to 18. Average code for each new component is 100 LOC. So cost of 18 new components, cost to develop 18 components is equal to 14 multiplied by 100 multiplied by 18. So what is the cost? Anybody? 14 multiplied by 100 multiplied by 18. It's $25200. Risk exposure. Risk exposure. Risk exposure that if these 18 components fail, how much company has to suffer the loss? Probability multiplied by cost impact. So risk exposure is equal to 80% is the probability they will fail. 0.8 multiplied by 25200 is equal to $20160. If these 18 components fail, company has to bear the loss of $20,160. Now we have one more exercise. So this is, let's have second exercise. The risk exposure, if 70% of the components will be reused from the 80 selected components, average code for each new component is 150 LOC at cost of $15 per LOC. So we have total components reused 70%, total component 80, reuse 0.7 multiplied by 80, 56 will be reused. How many new? 80 minus 56, 24. So software cost to need to develop each new component $15, average code $150, 150 LOC. Total cost 24 multiplied by 15 multiplied by 150, $54,000. And risk exposure probability is 75%, 0.75 multiplied by 54,000, so $40,500. If 24 components fail, company has to bear this loss. This is the risk management process. So we have new project, we identify the risk, we assess them, that how much they can damage. So we plan risk management activities. Then we keep on adding new risk management activities. In some companies, they have risk register. As a risk is reported, it is registered in the risk register. And then we observe that this risk is happening on to damage the project. Then we implement the risk management plan to reduce the damage. So this is the risk management process. Now I start the chapter number 3, software testing. As we discussed, that testing is a process to identify maximum number of bugs, and we have characteristics of effective software testing: arrangement of consistent FTR meetings to eliminate the errors before they can damage. First test the unit, then system, then integration, then acceptance. Select suitable testing method, repeated walkthrough sessions to ensure the quality. And then you have product principles of software testing. How to define testability? Ahmed Adil. Osama Ali. Harun Muhammad. Khan Saifuddin. Raid Abdullah. Shakir Ataullah. Garmullah. Muhammad Marai. Anyone? Deploying a demo of the software, Muhammad Yasin. Ability of a software, that how much it is easy to test. Ease of, yes, ease of or degree, ease of testing. How it is easy to test a software. For example, small releases will make it easy to test as compared to large releases. Large releases. And that is the reason in Agile, we have one of the practices to develop project in small releases instead of delivering in large releases. How much it is easy to test. Ability of a software to test it easily. That is testability. Then you have operability. Operability. Osama Ali. Bandar. Sultan Saifuddin. Be able to run on different operating system. Okay. Abdul Latif Garmullah. Muhammad Marai. Yes. How much it is easy to test the functionality of a software while testing. How much it is easy to perform its functionality. How much it's easy to function it operationally. That is the one of the principles of software testing. Let me show you before we move, the testability of a system is software is defined how much it is easy to perform its testing, how much it's functioning smoothly while executing. Then we have observability. Shakir Ataullah, what is observability? Majid Munawwar, Usam Khizr, Muhammad Yasin, Muhammad Marai. How much it is easy to test to observe, yes, internal inputs and outputs. Expected real-time inputs and expected outputs of the system are examined. So incorrect output will be easily recognized to trace the error in the code. So that is the observability, that it is easy to check the errors in terms of expected outputs. So you have requirements, traceability, matrix, RTM, requirements, traceability, matrix. When you are testing the system, you have expected outputs in front of you. So you are checking whether the expected outputs are not, and then if it is not as per the expected output, you can go and you can check the exactly where is the error, logical error, and then you can debug it. That is the observability. Then you have controllability. Harun, controllability. Usama Ali, Raid Abdullah, Sultan Saifuddin, Majid Munawwar, Muhammad Ahmed. Okay, open. Anyone? Controllability. Very good. Small section of the code is easy to control. So you can easily control the testing. Otherwise, if it is large, it is difficult to control. Like easy to test, same here, we are able to control the test. Large sections are difficult to test as compared to the, so small section of the code is easy to test as compared to the large code, because complexity will increase as size will increase. And then you have decompose the scope of testing. Don't try to cover the scope in terms of large. In order to have faster testing, you need to have divide the larger scope in terms of smaller scope. So you can have easily check the outcome that you have, what is the expected output is the same for that scope or not. Any question regarding testability, operability, observability, controllability, and decomposability? Any question up to here? Any question? Okay. Then you have simplicity. You have KISS principle. You have KISS principle, one of the agile principles. As code is simple, as it is easy to test. If it is very complex code, then it is difficult to test. Stability. If your requirements are continuously changing and you are changing the code frequently, then it is difficult to test it. It's not stable code. So you have to make less changes in the release. During a release, you can have stability in one release. So if you want to make changes, do it in the next release instead of the current release. And as you better understand the architecture, as it is easy to perform the testing. That is the reason in some software companies, to get the job of a tester or software quality assurance engineer, there is a requirement that you have 2 to 3 years of programming experience. 2 to 3 years of programming experience. As good programmers you are, as good tester you are. So understandability of the code will help test it in a better way. If you don't understand the code, you don't understand the architecture, how you will test the system? So these are the fundamental principles of software testing. Any question regarding simplicity, stability, and understandability? Any question? Very good. Let's move. Characteristics of a test case. Quality test case should identify an error. Number one, a good tester always identify errors. If you are not able to find any error, means you are poor tester, poor quality assurance engineer. And customer will identify, and then your boss will call you, Krujan Haya, thank you very much. I don't need you. You are not able to identify error. Now customer has identified the bugs, defects. So a good tester always identify errors. So there must be errors identification before you deliver to the customer or you ask the customer to test. A good test case should not be repeated. Like for example, you test the system with 1 to 3. It doesn't make sense you test it with 3, 4, 5 because you already tested the scenario. Same for mobile number, you already tested with ABC. Doesn't make sense you tested with DEF or GFG. Test case must be best of its type. Test case must be able to identify maximum number of errors in a class, function, and module. So it should be best of its type to identify maximum errors within a class, within a function, within a module. Test case, test data should not be either too easy or too complex. So it should be not easy, not complex, should be average, because most of the cases you have average input. That is the characteristics of a test case. Then how many approaches are there for the testing? Main approaches to perform testing. Sama Ali, Muhammad Yasin, Muhammad Marai, Abdul Latif Garamullah, Raid Abdullah. Okay, open. Anyone? Yes. We have white box and we have black box. White box and black box. For example, white box first. White box. What is the other name of white box? Anybody has idea? Shakir Ataullah. Abdul Latif Garamullah. Abdullah Ali. Sultan Saifuddin. No. Muhammad Yasin. Muhammad Marai. Open. Anyone? White box is also called glass box. White box or glass box or structural testing. Structural testing. These are the alternative names. Yes. Very good, Mr. Raid. Then glass, black box. Black box. What are the alternative names of black box? Saad Ghalib. Raid Abdullah. Muhammad Mabreek. I'm not asking the definition, I'm just asking the alternative names. It's also called, black box is also called, functional testing or behavioral testing. White box is also called glass box or structural testing, and black box is also called functional testing or behavioral testing. Now, as name is indicating, in the white box, you test the structure of the system. You test the structure of the system. And the black box, you test the functionality of the system. That means in white box, you read the source code and try to identify the errors. Whereas black box, you test it at runtime by execution and try to identify the errors, that how software behaves. Any question regarding the difference between white box and black box? Not necessary. First we will test. Then we ask the end user to test. As a programmer, first you will test. Then quality assurance engineer will test. The tester. Then configuration manager will test. And then you call for alpha and beta. Any other question? Any other question with respect to white box and black box? Any other question? Clear? Shall I move? Okay. White box testing is used to identify the errors in the structure of the source code at source code level. So you have the source code and you test it to identify the errors by reading the source code. Main source of introducing errors in the white box testing. A number of errors introduced into the code because of incorrect translation of requirements and design, misunderstood the requirements. So poor analysis, poor design, poor implementation. First, number one, some errors are introduced by the programmers, either syntax or logical. So white box testing helps to reduce the delay between the injection of error into the code and its detection. That's the reason of performing the white box testing. Every software product is realized by means of program code. So white box is a way of testing the external functionality of the code by examining and program code. It is also known as clear box or glass box or open box or structural. So program code represents what the product actually does. The testing by looking at the program code makes us get closer to what the product is actually doing. What are the main types of white box test? Ali, Saad Ghalib, Sultan Saifuddin, Majid Munawwar, Usam Khizar, Muhammad Mabrek, Muhammad Marai. Open, anyone? Okay. So you are saying unit. We have static and we have structural. Static testing for memory leaks. Static testing and structural testing are the main types of white box testing. What is static testing? Any student? Abdul Latif Garmullah, Shakir Ataullah, Sultan Saifuddin, Muhammad Marai, Muhammad Muhammad, Abdullah Ali, Abdullah Khalid, anyone? Open. Static testing. Okay. Static testing. Yeah. Static testing, which requires only the source code without execution. How many types of code we have? Types of code. साद गालिब, मोहम्मद मबरेक, मोहम्मद यासीन, हारून, रायद अब्दुल्ला, Abdullah. Okay, open. Anyone? How many types of code? We have three types of code. Three types of code. We have source code. We have object code. We have intermediate code. Source code, the code we write in a programming language like Java, .NET, PHP, it's source code, Python. And when we use compiler or interpreter, or assembler, for assembly language, we translate the source code into machine code. Machine code is also called object code, or executable code. Okay, I explained source code, object code. What is intermediate code? Sultan Saifuddin. Muhammad Marai. Usama Ali. Raid Abdullah. Shakir Ataullah. Ali Ali. Majid Anwar. Okay, open. Anyone can answer. Yeah. What is intermediate code? I explained source code. I explained the object code. Programming language like Java. In Java, when you compile source code, the source code, it is not translated into machine code. It is translated into an intermediate code. And in Java, it is called byte code. This byte code is not source code. It's not object code. It's intermediate. Now, every operating system has JVM. Ali, what is JVM? Shakir Ataullah, Muhammad Ahmed, Muhammad Marai, Haroon. Open any. Yes, Java virtual machine. So every operating system has JVM. This intermediate code, the byte code, is translated into machine code of that operating system of specific operating system. That makes Java platform independent. We say Java is portable. Java is platform independent. It can run on any operating system. And Microsoft.NET also copied the same idea. Microsoft.NET also copied the same idea. It also translates from source code into an intermediate code. Anybody knows what is the name of intermediate code in .NET? Shakir Ataullah? Majid Munawwar? Muhammad Marai? Muhammad Yasin? Okay, open, anyone can answer. It is called MSIL, Microsoft Intermediate Language. And then this MSIL, like Java, use JVM to translate from intermediate code into machine code, object code of any operating system. Even though .NET is not as smooth as Java, you need to install extra patches. You need to install extra patches to run it on Linux, Unix, Mac, Sun Solaris. Still not as smooth as Java is there. Java is. So that's about the source code, intermediate code, and machine code. So object code or machine code or executable code. So static testing is a type of testing which requires only the source code, not the object code, executable code, or machine code. It does not involve executing the program, but involves select people going through the code to find whether the code works according to the functional requirements. It is written in accordance to the design. Any functionality missing, handle error properly, exception handling is there. Exception handling is there or not? That is the job of functional static testing. Any question up to here? Any question up to here? Great. The main advantage of static testing, humans can find errors better than the computers. For example, you are using method overloading. When you have two or more methods having the same name but different parameters. So instead of using the variables, you have put wrong variables. You have wrong parameters by mistake in an expression. So computer will not detect this error and execute the statement and incorrect results, whereas human can spot such an error that you have entered wrong variables or wrong parameters. When some other person read your code, he can identify errors better than you because you are not the best person to judge your code. So we have multiple perspectives like pair programming. We discuss for Agile. That one person will write the code, other will test it, other will read it. Static testing, for white box testing, black box testing. So you have multiple perspectives. So more problems can be identified than automated testing. Humans can better compare the code against the design specification, technical specification, Human can detect many problems at one go, even can identify the root of the problem. Computer testing, unit testing, integration testing, the automated testing tool will not identify such errors. More often, many problems get fixed by focusing to the root cause, and the reactive testing only uncovers one problem at a time, like automated testing. Overall time required to fix all problems can be reduced by a human evaluation. These are the advantages of static testing. Okay, I think it's enough for this session. Let's have a break of 15 minutes. Any question up to here? Any question up to here? Okay, thank you. Inshallah, see you in the next session.